This week, a new book says we can solve the climate problem with existing technologies by 2035. And yet my Roomba still can't deliver a snack to me in my sofa without spilling it and then sweeping it up.
Plant-based eggs have in some cases become cheaper than chickens' eggs. This is great news. However, many chickens are upset their jobs are being taken by lowly mung beans.
Oh, there's a pecking order, Brian. Naysayers say the energy transition will mind the earth bare, but the truth will surprise you, especially if you're a naysayer.
To that I say nay. General Motors is investing nearly $1 billion for a new generation of V8 engines.
Ooh.
After that, they plan to ramp up their horse and buggy production.
Also on this week's show, the Pakistan power grid goes down, and red states are benefiting most from the new jobs in renewables that Joe Biden threw at them. And red states are benefiting most from new renewable jobs in the United States. All that and more on this week's edition of The Clean Energy Show. Brian, it's time for a book report. Now, I don't have an intro for James's book report.
Because you never thought you'd read another book?
No, and I haven't. But The Guardian did.
Okay.
Book report.
This is... it doesn't say Brian's book report. It's just book report. It's you singing.
Yeah.
Anyone can use it, really.
Yeah.
You want to use it in another podcast, give us a call. We'll lend it to you. So the Guardian has a report on a book that's not out yet. It's out April 2nd. It's called No Miracles Needed. And it is by a fella that I've been following for a lot of years. Very smart man. An academic at Stanford University in California named Mark Jacobson. And again, the title is No Miracles Needed. And that is a reference to Bill Gates, I think, said we need miracles. We need to develop miracles to solve the energy transition. And he says this is kind of a rebuttal to that.
Poor Bill Gates. He said so many things that people come back later and call him on.
I'm surprised we didn't get a call to write a blurb for the book, because this is basically our show. This book is our show. This says that we don't have time for anything else. The existing technologies, wind, solar, batteries of different kinds that are currently available, and even some odd ones that he mentions, but they are available, are all we need to solve the energy transition. We could actually do it, like 95% of it by 2035, if we deployed what we have now. And then that also increases a mass deployment of these technologies that we have now and speeds up their improvement. We see wind turbines and solar panels improving with what they can output and their price coming down. This speeds up with a quick adoption of it. And so many people who listen to the show, and so many people who talk to me on the street and relatives, they all have their own pet fix. My son, my damn bastard son. If you're listening, Aiden, he said, oh, nuclear's great. You stick a rod in and it lasts for years. Yeah, but how much does it cost to build the power plant? Well, I don't know, but it lasts for years.
I'm sure he'll appreciate this assessment.
And then he's in engineering, so he's got all these other engineers with their own things, and they're kiboshing this and kiboshing that, and all engineers apparently have a thought on that. I was listening to a radio program, What on Earth, which is also a podcast on clean energy, and they were talking about different people about teaching climate classes in university, and some of them were not climate people, but they said they had a lot of engineering students. And the engineering students all came to the table with their own thing. It's like, it's a problem that can be engineered. The solution can be engineered. And they mentioned things like umbrellas in space. Yeah. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. And God knows how that's more complicated than it sounds. And God knows when that would even launch if you did something like that. If that was the only solution, it would take, 20 years at least. We don't have time. Jacobson has scores of academic papers to his name. I'm reading from The Guardian now. And he has been influential in policies passed by cities, states, countries around the world targeting 100% green power. But he's also controversial, Brian, not least for pursuing a $10 million lawsuit against researchers who claimed his work was flawed, which he later dropped. But he is highly regarded and people do follow his policy. Bill Gates said we have to put a lot of money into miracle technologies, Jacobson says, but we don't. We have the technologies that we need. Wind, solar, geothermal, hydro, electric cars. We have batteries, heat pumps, energy efficiency improvements. We have the technology to do all this. We have 95% of the technologies right now that we need to solve the problem. The missing 5% is for long-distance aircraft and ships, he says, for which hydrogen-powered fuel cells can be developed. So, or whatever else we can get in the meantime. But that's the 5% of the 95 that's not. The 95 is solvable. It's energy. So wind and solar are cheaper too. So average bills will fall 63%, he says. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And not a bad thing. But if you buy nuclear, then it's up 63% or 163%. It's just stupid. Jacobson divides approaches to the energy transition into two camps. One says we should try everything. They're the all of above camp and keep investing huge amounts of money in technologies that may or may not be available to work in 10 years. Like small nuclear reactors, according to our local government here. 10 years is too late. Carbon emissions, and write this down, kids, if it's not in your brains right now, carbon emissions must fall by 45% by 2030. Scientists agree to keep on track for no more than 1.5 degrees of global heating. 45% by 2030. That's not frickin' umbrellas in space in 2060, people. This is a thing that can and needs to be solved right now. Jacobson says, let's focus on what we have to deploy it as fast as possible. And then we will improve those technologies by deploying them and the speed. 7 million people die every year from just air pollution, Brian, 7 million. And why wait for that? Why wait for millions of people to die? Storage can be batteries, pumped hydro, flywheels even, he says, compressed air. Because these things exist and are proven, but I don't know how cheap they are. They'd have to come down a little bit in price, but they don't have to be developed. And lowering and raising heavy weights, which is something we've also talked about on the show before. But Jacobson thinks batteries will win because of cost. He says others would have to contribute. Perhaps they can contribute, but they'll have to compete on cost. So new research indicates that electric vehicle batteries alone could provide the short-term storage needed by global grids by as early as 2030. So people say, but the sun doesn't shine all day. Well, if everybody has an electric car, an electric bus, electric truck, the grid is going to be different.
The grid.
Yeah. Which brings us to a CS fast fact. The drilling and mining for the fossil fuels in the world every year consume 11% of all energy. That's just the drilling and the mining for fossil fuels, not the burning of them.
Yeah.
But the use of energy in the world, 11%, more than a tenth of it goes to just oil. Screw you, oil. Moving on.
Yeah. So, and in terms of batteries, I mean, we still have to ramp up battery production, and it is still ramping up, and that will take some time. But yeah, in the meantime, you can make batteries out of pumping water up a hill, basically. I mean, there's other ways to do a battery. And other people have said we need solid state batteries in our cars, like these, hypothetical solid state batteries would be better. And, lots of people are pursuing that. But the fact is the lithium ion batteries we have now work just fine. We don't have to have that technology.
Don't delay anything. Don't wait for solid state. Solid state will come. It could be here sooner than we think. It might be 2030. It might be even later than that. But don't wait. Let's get going now. That's a good point.
Okay, so plant-based eggs are now becoming potentially cheaper than shell eggs. So this is a report from Bloomberg, and this is one of those stories that we're going to report on as these things, happen occasionally, but eventually this will be the norm, we believe. These alternative plant-based foods will eventually, we think, all become cheaper than their sort of animal-based alternatives. So, yeah, this is from Bloomberg. At the end of 2022, something strange happened in the U.S. egg market. On a per-unit basis, the price for plant-based eggs fell below those of chickens' eggs. And this had to do more with the price of chickens' eggs going up and, just the inflation that we've had. So I've never tried plant-based eggs. It comes in a liquid form. Unfortunately, they don't make a nice little shell for you. That would be kind of fun.
That's asking a lot. Are you really calling for that? Plant-based eggs and shells?
We need plant-based shells for eggs.
Without the kraken, what's the point?
Yeah. But so yeah, it's a liquid egg, and it comes in a carton. You can also get chicken's eggs in a carton as well, just in liquid form. But anyway, turns out the main ingredient in these things is mung beans, which is a thing I've really never heard of before. But
better than dung beans.
Yeah, but I haven't been to the health food store in a long time.
No.
I mean, I'm assuming they might have them there, and perhaps
they do.
Try
I actually looked it up. There's 2 health food stores in Regina where we live that have them, but just 2, and they're obscure. They're kind of like vegan-based health food stores. So yeah, we're not vegan, are we? You're not.
I'm not. No,
but you do enjoy a vegan meal now and again, sure.
Sure, why not? So one of these companies that makes them is called Eat Just, and they estimate that because it has saved 10.9 billion gallons of water and 16,000 acres of land use since launching their fake eggs, basically. It estimates avoiding 52 million kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions. It's like taking 11,000 cars off the road. So these are the implications for a lot of these plant-based foods, is they're just far less energy and resource intensive than animal-based foods.
And eggs are not nearly as bad as beef. But as I mentioned last week, I worked on an agricultural documentary for a summer when I was in university. And I spent time in chicken coops on farms, and I was not happy. Like I'm not a PETA person, but my God, that's not a good life for those. And they were not happy. They pick their neighbors to death. It's like, it's bad, Brian. It's bad.
No, and it doesn't have to be that way. But like gasoline cars spewing pollution all the time, it's just been like this for so long that we just kind of accept it.
Yeah, but you need your shell, don't you?
We just need plant-based eggshell.
When I saw this in the script, I went looking on the internet for reviews. And I noticed they came, what is it? Eat Just came in a sort of a glass or plastic, I don't know, glass or plastic bottle of like a liter. And it seemed like there was 2 portions if you wanted scrambled eggs. You could make half of it, would make 1 portion, and the other half would be free part, and that would be it. So it seems like it's very expensive. And and this, the fact that they were cheaper than chicken's eggs, I think is probably reversed since then, and it's now more expensive than chicken eggs. And this depends, of course, on where you live and the supply chain where you live. But, in the long run, should be cheaper. Well, it seems that once these things take over, once they gather momentum, and there's going to be an S-curve to the cost and adoption, and adoption goes up, cost goes down. I'm sure all those figures you stated are just, tiny, sales figures, because they can't have sold more, anything close to a grocery store sell.
No, it's eventually going to, move to other segments of the food industry and be cheaper in all of them eventually.
They even have some sort of folded over product. I don't know how that works. I couldn't find it. But they have there's one that's liquid, and then there's one that's folded over. And I don't know if those are refrigerated, if they come in the freezer section, but they're like, folded over that you can throw right in the toaster or something, like an egg sandwich or something. We got a new tea kettle the other day. Remember how my toaster has a keep warm function?
Yep.
This tea kettle has a keep warm function.
Wow.
Again, more electricity use by James.
You're living in the future, though.
I need more solar panels. And you know what? My daughter texted me yesterday from high school, and she said her teacher was talking about her solar panels. She got 28 of them her first winter. They're all covered with snow because they're on a flattish roof, like yours.
Mine too, yeah.
And I'm having trouble getting rid of, some of my snow's gone, but I have a more angled roof, so it tends to go on warmer days, but it's been the worst winter yet for that sort of thing.
No, I've given up on winter production for my panels.
Yeah, but that does not affect, I told her that does not affect, utility solar farms, because the utility solar farms, at least around Canada, are on a single axis tilt. So when it snows, they tilt them either down or straight up and down so that it doesn't collapse. I was watching, what was I watching? I was watching Sunday morning television, and old Fareed Zakaria was on CNN, and he was talking to the president of Greece. And the president of Greece, I don't follow Greek politics too closely, but they were having some serious financial problems last decade, right? They were the welfare case of the European Union and getting lent lots of money. Now that's all gone. I didn't know that. You hear bad news, but you don't hear that that's all gone. They've paid back all the debts pretty much because things are going so damn well for them. Now, they had a populist government, a left-wing populist government in basically the same time Trump was. And then they replaced him with a center-right prime minister. And he's all in on the things you and I are in. Like, why can't that be the case in our politics? Yeah. Why is it a political issue? Why is it a woke issue? You're just you're in fantasy land if you think that one form of energy that's displacing others on cost alone, not on ethics or anything else, is a woke issue, and it bothers you. But this guy was on CNN, and they've reached 100%. Let's hear him.
The green transition is also quite impressive. At this point, what percentage of Greece's electricity is produced from renewables?
Close to 50%. And there were days, in October where for hours we produced 100% of our electricity from renewables.
So when you look at, to me, what's interesting about the Greek case is you have a center-right government, pro-market, but as you say, responsible on green issues, also on protecting the vulnerable. Is there a model here for how to stave off populism?
I think the main cleavages today are not so much between the center-right and the center-left, but between those who believe in policy pragmatism and in a well-functioning democracies, and those who promise the moon while at the same time undermining democratic institutions.
Oh, if we had that in Canada, that basic, or United States, the basic idea of no BS. Like, of course it's good. Of course, that's one of the big pillars of why they're out of debt is because they've gone all in on green energy. Yeah. And it's not the main reason, but it's one of, several. And, oh man, it's the political discussions here are just, you and I live are the worst ever, but it's terrible.
It's super depressing, and I try not to pay too much attention because it just gets depressing. But you would think that a government on the right that is pro-market, to use the words from that interview there, pro-market should be pro-renewables because it's the better business decision.
Yeah. If you're not going renewables, then you're going against the market. You're wasting money. I just thought I'd throw that out there, Brian.
Yeah. Okay, so a story from Pakistan. They've been having huge problems with their electrical grid in Pakistan. So this report here is from the BBC. They've had power out in really all of their major cities. Karachi, Islamabad, Lahore, Peshawar. This has been, a huge problem. And it sounds basically like it's a infrastructure problem. Their grid is just not particularly robust, and it's kind of falling apart. But Pakistan would probably do well to follow the example of Greece, because Pakistan generates most of its power using imported fossil fuels. It's one thing to burn fossil fuels, especially when you can just dig them up, in the yard next door, or down south here in Saskatchewan, we dig up coal and burn it, which is a terrible thing to do, but at least we don't have to import it.
Yeah, can you imagine?
So most of their power comes from imported fossil fuels. Just imagine the drain on the economy that is to spend all that money on all that fuel. And as global energy prices have increased in the last year, further pressure has been put on the country's finances and its foreign reserves, which it needs to pay for energy imports. So, 12 hours, last I heard, in these major cities, massive power outages. So hopefully they can get this sorted and start moving towards clean energy that they don't have to import.
And in the lightning round, I'm going to have a story about South Africa having similar problems due to an aging coal plants. But, people say, Mark Jacobson said in his book that some grids can already handle 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
you see memes going around that say it can only handle 20% or something like that. Well, some grids can handle 100% already without hardly any modifications.
Yeah.
And some grids will need modifications, but it's a learning process that we have plenty of time to do in the next 7 years as we deploy renewables.
And speaking of that polarization, which is so depressing to read in the news, but we're in this situation where you just know that people are hearing about Pakistan's problems and probably blaming them on clean energy or the wind not blowing, and whereas the other side of the argument is blaming it on fossil fuels. And you can look out there on the internet and find whatever view there is to support your view if that's the way you do it.
Well, there's one set of people who will make money off of this and create jobs, and there's the other set will just sit there and complain and live in a fantasy world. But the fact is, clean energy rules the day already, and it's going to get way, way more power. Brian, it is time for the coveted segment, the Tweet of the Week. Yes, this is where I have a tweet highlighted. Twitter, that thing that people used to go on. Well, there's a lot of misinformation on the net from a Twitter thread shared by tens of thousands of people many times, claiming that basically we're going to rape the earth of all of its minerals if we do the clean transition that is necessary to get to net zero. So therefore we should just give up and let the earth burn and our children die float off in an iceberg. Yep. So this is a tweet from Visa Sklakinian. And also, he's just pointing out information that is available out there, and he does a rebuttal, a multi-threaded rebuttal to this, and a lot of my climate people, including Mark Jacobson, and have retweeted this. So I take that as an endorsement that it's good information. So if we assume the positive option that transition will work, and it'll take the next 27 years to get there, and require 3 billion tons of minerals, the transition will only average 3.4% more minerals to the annual mineral production. So this is combating the idea that's going around that everything we mined in human history so far will be needed for the green transition. That this is going around. So there's a lot of people who believe this, and they'll continue to believe it. The fact is, it's not true. Only 3.4% of that, only 3.4% more will be needed to the annual mineral annually. This is 3.4% more than what we are already putting out there now to do that. So it's still a big deal. Yeah. That's not an easy thing, and it's still a grand project of the worldwide proportions to do this, but it's 3.4%. It is not impossible. A, it's definitely not impossible, and B, it's not going to wreck the planet. And a lot of these minerals, we're seeing recycling of wind turbines and solar panels already. Imagine what it'll be like 50 years from now when they get good at it, when they have a reason to recycle them and a profit margin to do it. And batteries, chemical batteries, are looking good for electric cars. Like it's a high amount now. It's going to get higher. And that'll be the cheapest way to get new minerals for new batteries, is to recycle the elements in those batteries, the rare earth elements, which they can do. And they're just starting, and they're already pretty darn good at it. Go ahead.
And I'm just going to mention an article here. I've mentioned before, Hannah Ritchie has a Substack called Sustainability by Numbers, and she looks at these issues in terms of data and statistics and numbers, and posted one on January 18th about this very issue. And the title is Mining Quantities for Low Carbon Energy is Hundreds to Thousands of Times Lower than Mining for Fossil Fuels. So you were talking earlier about, how much energy the energy we spend digging.
I know, it's crazy. It's stupid. And the land use remember we talked about land use in recent shows. It's a fraction of what fossil fuels use now.
It's already more land use.
And yet,
than
we can't, make something new. Oil is fine. We can build steel structures for oil and mine them out of the ground and transport them and burn them and refine them, but not anything new. No,
but putting up a solar farm, that's a bridge too far.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's just, let's call it stupid would be giving it a compliment.
Yeah.
That's a CES fast fact. 40% of U.S. corn grown on the area of a size of England. So 40% of U.S. corn is used for ethanol production, and that is the size, it takes up the size of England.
Wow. Which
is a waste. We don't like ethanol here in the show.
Yeah.
Our local refinery, mere kilometers away from me, certainly within nose range, is switching to ethanol and different things.
Well, imagine if they used an area the size of England and filled it with solar panels and wind turbines. It'd be amazing.
It would be amazing, and it would probably power the world. Nuclear power is switching off wind farms in Scotland. I'm going to touch on this story. The operation of a nuclear power plant in Scotland, is being blamed for the large amounts spent on compensating wind farms. Why? Basically because they can't shut down the nuclear plant when the wind starts producing.
Right.
This is a problem.
Yeah.
This is a problem with nuclear. Mixing in with renewables, because renewables have up and down days, and some of those days they're going to give that electricity away, and they're going to make green hydrogen with it and other things. So you can't shut down nuclear. So what do? They're compensating wind farms.
And asking them to shut down.
Asking them to shut down and paying them money, and that raises the costs of electricity.
Yeah.
So, storage. We need more storage. So the operation of nuclear power plant in Scotland is blamed for the large amounts of money being spent compensating. The national grid had to shut down production of the wind farms, and I don't know. I'm just going to leave it there. We're going to start seeing stuff like this.
Yeah, and as we've said before, nuclear can be good baseload power, but not if it's not flexible. It's just not flexible enough.
And here's the thing: the more cheaper clean energy there are coming onto the mix makes the nuclear more expensive, because then you have to go from 90% capacity to 80 to 70 to 60 to 50, because everything else, they can't do it overnight, but as the mix gets larger, the nuclear goes down, and
then you have to pay the wind farms to shut down because they can only go down a certain level on their production.
Now, I've got a tweet here that I sent out last week that was about the from Bloomberg, how it's going with electric transportation, okay? 3.8%, this is worldwide, are now light commercial vehicles, okay? That is small delivery vans, the person who just came by with an Amazon package for me. Those are going to go, they're going to start taking off, because those vans, those, car platform-based vans, delivery vans, and truck-based, pickup truck-based Rivian delivery vans are going electric, and that's going to expand a lot this year and probably more next year. Passenger cars are currently at 13%, which is kind of at a tipping point. Two-wheelers, you might be interested to know, are at 39%, and we really can see different companies innovating with that and the price coming down. I think that's going to... I'll bet that'll push 60% next year, and we'll get into 75% the year after. Like, it's going to take off fast. And buses, to my surprise, are almost at 50%. They're at 49%. All the new buses being made, 49% of them are battery electric in the world right now.
That's amazing.
And to have a world with non-diesel buses that don't make noise. It's a beautiful world. I hope I live long enough to see it. It shouldn't be too long.
Yeah.
Brian from CNN, South Africa, coal, which, coal in South Africa supplies 80% of their electricity, is an unreliable electricity source, apparently, because it's causing blackouts. 205 days last year of blackouts. That's worse than Pakistan. And every day in 2023 so far, every day when this was written a week ago. So blackouts, this is from CNN if you want to go look at the story. Blackouts due to an inherent unreliability of coal power station fleet. The reason is they haven't taken care of the coal power stations. A lot of countries haven't taken care of their electrical infrastructure.
No, and they're all just getting old. A lot of them were probably built 50, 60 years ago, and they're just super old.
And the time has come. And, speaking of the time coming, it is time for the lightning round. This is a weekly, fast-paced look that we end the show with, looking at the headlines of clean energy and climate news. Can you believe the show is coming to an end already? Political says GOP lawmakers voted en masse against Biden's signature IRA bill. This is the big Inflation Reduction Act, bombshell act that came down last summer thanks to good old Joe Manchin, friend of the show, who approved it. And yes, all kinds of billions and trillions are going towards a lot of good things. But get this, 2/3 of the green energy projects announced so far since it became law, where are they going? They're going to Republican-held congressional districts that voted against it. Isn't that just a pisser?
Interesting.
The only good news about that I see is that they won't be able to shut it down. This will keep it permanent, which will save our lives, our hides. And they won't be able to shut it down when they get into power. E-bike battery theft is a growing concern in the Netherlands. It went up 300% last year. So, more e-bike batteries are coming fitted with GPS trackers. Bikes themselves are coming, but not the batteries, actually. But people can put, like, Apple AirPod, what do they call them?
AirTags.
AirTags on them.
Yeah.
Some, I know my bike batteries, you can't really open it. They don't want you to open it and do something to it and burn down your house. But there might be a way to get one in there. I don't know. Mine locks onto my bike, has an actual key. I don't know, but I still don't trust it, because it's like $350 plus tax.
Yeah, you might be able to get it off with a crowbar or something like that.
India has started work on, get this, a 1 gigawatt battery storage facility at 2 adjacent sites. They're both half a gigawatt. They're being built. This is I can't remember which site this was from. It was from an Indian newspaper. This should be a huge story, but 1 gigawatt, that is a nuclear power plant worth of batteries in one fell swoop.
That's amazing.
Just boom, like that. And they had auctions on it last spring, and it's getting built now. In April, they were having auctions, and the winning developer gets to keep 40% of the storage to itself to seek revenue opportunities. That was part of the deal. So they get to sell that electricity and make some money off of it, I guess, during peak times and things like that. So Tesla has leaked the Magic Dock CCS adapter ahead of its opening its supercharger network to CCS adapters. Now, all Teslas use a proprietary adapter, right? Like the one you're buying.
In North America, they do.
In North America. And now they are opening it up to people who maybe drive a Chevy Bolt or a Ford Mustang Mach-E or something like that.
Yeah.
Every other car uses CCS. But they don't have the connectors there. You can buy one, but the interesting thing to me is that they seem to have come up with a way to know who you are when you come up, and you'll have to use a card or something to plug into your thing. They'll know you're not a Tesla driver, like an electronic card or your phone app or something like that. To initiate it, and they'll know that you need a CCS adapter. So a CCS adapter will automatically, apparently, lock on to the end of the Tesla. But if you're a Tesla driver, it won't. It'll just come out of the stall, and you won't have that thing on the end.
Yeah, on the Tesla superchargers, normally you just pull it out from where it's held, and you plug it in. But they've added this adapter, and this is not official yet. It's just sort of been leaked. But they've added this adapter and sort of pushed it up into that same hole where where it sits normally in the charger. And I guess, depending on your car, you'll either get just the Tesla one or the adapter will come with it.
Now, you could get them to put it on, right? But these things are worth $400 or $500 usually, at least retail. Mm-hmm. So they don't want to lose those. I mean, every Yahoo with a Chevy Bolt will steal it, and then I'll use this at my next Tesla adapter, and everything will be fine.
And you want an elegant solution. You don't necessarily want these things like dangling from a chain or something like that. So this sounds like it's a more elegant solution, although potentially more complicated. So, hopefully it actually works.
Chains can be cut.
Yeah, that's true. Chains can be cut.
Ooh, is that another CES fast fact sneaking up on us? Globally, Brian, there are on average 8 people for every car in circulation. That's globally. And here's another one, another CES fast fact. In the second quarter of 2022, Texas had 3 times more wind, solar, and battery storage under construction than California. Not the same, not close to, 3 times as much as California.
That's amazing. And it could
Politically very different states, Brian. I'll point that out.
But it's very much a free market type of grid that they have there. And so those who are pro-market and pro-business are perhaps seeing an opportunity there.
This is from New York Times opinion columnist David Wallace Wells. He says on Twitter, showing a single digital ad to a single user involves, on average, emitting between roughly 1/10 and a whole pint of carbon dioxide. 1/10 of a pint to a whole pint of carbon dioxide. Informed estimates suggest as many as 400 billion ads appear online every day. Not so many on Twitter right now.
That's a little frightening.
Polyculture. This is the idea of mixing 2 very different kinds of agriculture into one. So a polyculture of wheat grown, this is wheat that we have here in the Canadian plains where we live, for making bread and grain, stuff like that, flour, combined with walnut trees of all things, which we don't have here and can't have due to weather, produces 40% higher yields. 40% higher by combining these 2 weird things. It's like peanut butter and chocolate, Brian. 40% more pleasure.
So you got the trees in rows, and then the wheat goes between them, it looks like, from the picture here.
Yeah, that's right. And enough for a large combine to go through. So, yeah, it's 1 hectare of wheat/walnut mix yields the same as 1.4 hectares of each crop grown separately. And there's different reasons for that. The trees are more spaced out, so they grow bigger. Just the water management of it all, and it just works out really well.
Yeah, and the light can still get through, but also I think sometimes I have to worry about the wheat getting burned because there's too much sun.
Burned and blown and all kinds of protections. Yeah, there's a lot of nuances to it. And this is new, but it could affect the climate if you're getting more out of the same land, right? Another CES fast fact. Boy, we're chock full of them this week. Even if all cars sold in the United States today are EVs, it will take an estimated 9 years for EVs to replace just half the cars on U.S. roads, according to the Fuels Institute. Bloomberg Intelligence says that we are in the second half of 2023. Bloomberg Intelligence says that in the second half of 2023, we expect plant-based dairy sales to rise 6 to 8%. So dairy, remember, a lot of people are saying, and we have a dairy farmer and listeners to the show, that dairy is going to go bankrupt, traditional dairy, by 2030.
That might be the first of these to go.
Yes, dairy is anticipated to be the first to go because I think it's only like 1 or 2% or maybe 3% of milk is actual milk.
Yeah.
The rest is water and fats and sugars, which can be easily added. So they expect sales to rise 6 point. Meat alternatives, though, are only 1.2%, 1 to 2% rather.
Yeah.
And they're not doing very well. And part of that is inflation. Because there's a premium to pay for that, so people aren't opting for that anymore. They're kind of scared of that now. But there's been a lot of hit pieces on Bloomberg, Brian, from the same writer on plant-based meats, but the stocks are doing terrible right now.
Yeah, and perhaps we'll have to come out of this quasi-recession that we're in for all of this stuff to truly take off again.
Yes, and then once they do, the prices will displace real meat, and hopefully they'll start improving it as well. There's no reason to believe there won't be constant improvements to the taste and texture to meet consumer preference. But I noticed that our Tim Hortons restaurants in Canada don't seem to be selling plant-based sausages for their burger, their breakfast sandwiches and things like that anymore. It was only a 6-month experiment, apparently. I haven't found anything official on that, if anybody knows. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Nat Bullard from Bloomberg, an important chart from the Rocky Mountain Institute, speed of primary energy supply growth. This is from when an energy maker, like coal, for example, goes from 1 exajoule to 10 exajoules, basically getting off the ground to its first benchmark. It took 51 years for coal to reach 10 exajoules of energy, to go from 1 to 10, okay? 34 for oil. Gas, 32. And wind, just 13. And solar, even less, 10. So 10 years for solar to get to what took coal 51 years to do.
Yeah, that should tell people something.
And if we use larger benchmarks with the price coming down, it's going to be crazy. That is our time for this week. That's our show for this week. We thank you for listening. We always appreciate you listening. Take the time to contact us, as I said, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. Where aren't we? Everywhere. Clean Energy Pod is our handle. If you're new to the show, subscribe on your podcast app. And you know what? It's time to ask for people to please rate and review us on your podcast app, be it iTunes or wherever you are. 5-star review, 4.5 if you don't like Brian too much, something like that. Brian, you took that hard. I could see you. Anyway, he'll be back.
5 stars only, please.
Brian will be back next week. We'll see you then, kids.
See you next week.